it's Regina. Welcome back to my haunted library. Today I have what I consider to be a lost horror classic from the early 70s, and that is Harvest Home by Thomas Tryon. Thomas Tryon started out as an actor, movie star. He's a very good-looking man. And he switched to writing, according to what I read. Otto Preminger, the famously brutal director, kind of turned him off to acting. I don't blame him. He was a very good writer. He really broke through with this novel called The Other, which came out in 1971, I believe. And that was kind of like a big hit about these evil twins. It was made into a movie. And I remember seeing that movie when I was just a tiny baby. With a double feature of that and Hell House. And I have to admit, I, at that time, appreciated Hell House a little more, just because of the horror aspect of it. The Other was a little more of a thought-provoking horror, but I've since then gone on to appreciate it. But Harvest Home is a book that you don't really hear about too much, and it's a shame because it's incredibly good. It is out of print, but you can find a lot of these vintage copies around because it was mass-produced because The Other was such a success. And there's also a $1.99 Kindle version. And I just happen to be doing a giveaway for that, and I'm going to link that below if you want to take your chance, or if you want to just pay $1.99 for a good book for your Kindle, you can do that. But I did decide to do a giveaway for it just because I'm so enthusiastic about this book. So where to begin with this? I also own the VHS tape of it. This was a mini-series starring Bette Davis and a very young and adorable Roseanne Arquette. This was a reread for me. I'm very familiar with this book. I loved it when it came out. I read it. It was a book that was kind of hanging out in my family home when I was a kid. A little bit of a dirty book, if you know what I mean. The premise of the book is Ned Constantine is a commercial artist living in Manhattan with his wife and their teenage daughter. His wife's name's Beth, his daughter's name's Kate. And he's dissatisfied with doing commercial art. He really wants to be a fine artist. And his wife is also not satisfied. There's a certain level of unhappiness going on. The daughter is moody, she has asthma, and she has these fits. So they go take a little weekend trip to New England. So they cross a bridge, the Lost Whistle Bridge to be exact. It's like an old covered bridge over a creek. And they enter this world that is lost in time called Cornwall Combe. Cornwall Combe is, it's almost like an Amish community where the people do everything by hand. They are farmers and they farm corn. Everything's about corn in this little town called Cornwall Combe. And they don't use tractors, they use sickles. It's like a community where everyone in the town is involved in this harvest, and they have festivals throughout the year of their planting and kindling and harvesting. And each one of these festivals has like a significance in the town. And in fact, the book is divided into the series of these different festivals, leading to the big one, which is Harvest Home. So normally outsiders are not welcome in this town, but when they visit, there's an old widow named Widow Fortune who Bette Davis plays in the TV series, and she's really great. She has a great Yankee accent, but she was from New England originally. And this old Widow Fortune is like, she looks like an extra in a production of The Crucible. You know, she's wearing like a long black dress with big full-length skirts and a little white wimple on her head, and she has a ribbon with her shears attached. Those shears become very important. And she rides her own little buggy. No cars for her. Everything is done the old way. At first, they're kind of, treated politely, but they're not exactly welcome. And then they get a message that they are welcome to buy this old house that they were looking at. So they move in. And at first, they're really charmed by this little town. And there's a whole cast of characters in the town that add a local color to the story. And the characters are really good, but they're also very symbolic, which I will also get to. But they are fleshed out. They're not like flat allegorical characters at all. This is a very well-crafted novel. So after reading The Witching Hour, which I loved, And, you know, Anne Rice's prose is as like winding as a bougainvillea vine through an iron scrolled fence. This book is like a tight puzzle where every piece falls into place perfectly. It really is so well crafted. And any writer out there, if you are interested in the structure of writing, which I am, like a novel structure, I've been doing a whole series about Robert McKee's story, about story structure. Read this book. Read this book because it really is seamless in this regard. Now, I was reading some reviews and some people said, you know, it's slow. I just think that there's a greater expectation today to have like a big bang on every single page. The first three-quarters of the book is really a slow burn, but it's still interesting. You know, you don't need explosions on every page as long as you have a big explosion at the end, which this one definitely does. That it has an incredible payoff. This is pre-Stephen King, but it kind of sets up, I mean, obviously it was a huge influence. It's kind of an obvious influence on Children of the Corn. It's kind of like an inverse Stepford Wives, where in the Stepford Wives you have the city couple moving to the suburbs into this world that's controlled by the men who are victimizing the women. This is the opposite. You have this female-centered religion. This is an old agrarian religion that is a mother-worshipping cult. So the women, the female elements are strangling, in a way, the men in this town. I also really admire the way Thomas Tryon weaves in this Greek mythology, like the women of Cornwall Coombe are like the Maenads in Greek mythology, the frenzied women who followed, they were in the cult of Dionysus. And there's even some little symbolism I caught, like when they move into the house, the woman who shows them the house is their neighbor. And those are two really good characters in this book too. One of his neighbors blind. So there's like the idea of like the Oedipal blindness, or Cassandra, the goddess who speaks the truth, but no one believes her. And there's a room in their house that the neighbor calls the back ante room. And Ned thinks that she says the bacchante room. So we have like the Bacchus, the group of, Bacchus, of course, was the name of Dionysus in the Roman name of Dionysus. So, yeah, there's all this like Greek symbolism woven in here. And as you remember from your mythology, the Maenads attack Pentheus when he watches their ritual. In the play, the Bacchae, Pentheus wants to find out what's going on because his mother and his all the women in his life are running around following Dionysus, and he doesn't like that, so he goes and spies on them, and they catch him spying, and they tear him apart with their hands and fling his head into like a boomerang of a tree, and his head goes flying. So there are elements of that in this book, and I really appreciate that. So you have literary elements that we all learned about in school, like foreshadowing and symbolism and subplots and allusions, in a commercial thriller, which is something you don't see that often. So I really appreciated that as an English major myself. This book really shows that if you know your archetypes, you can really work them into your story in a very clever way, which he does. And in the female characters, you see these female archetypes, like Widow Fortune is like the wise crone archetype. Like she's kind of a witch where she mixes up different potions and she has like healing powers. And at first that seems very like, oh shucks, down home, isn't she quaint? She's mixing up medicines and things like this and herbs, but she's actually a very powerful character. And then his wife Beth is like the mother figure. She gets pregnant. She wants to have a baby. His daughter is the maiden, the virgin. And then there's the, I guess, Whore Babylon character archetype, who is the town seductress, Tamar, who works as in the post office of all places. And that leads to a very memorable scene where she seduces Ned on the bank of a creek, and they do it in the mud, so to speak. But even that even that sex scene is like highly symbolic. I was reading some of the reviews that were saying, oh, it's rapey or whatever, but I saw it more like he is being engulfed by this feminine earth goddess, and he is trying to take control in the sexual act, and he's trying to plow her, you know. They use this kind of, it's a little bit obvious symbolism, but I thought it was really interesting. So he's trying to, and she's laughing the whole time because she knows that she's stronger as the earth goddess. So yeah, it's kind of about a man being engulfed by the female principles, and that's a different take than you see in a lot of horror, which is usually, you know, toxic masculinity and the female victim. This is an inverse of that, and it's really interesting. So I don't want to give too much of the plot away because it really is a plot-driven story, and it really relies on a great twist at the end. And perhaps when you're reading it, you'll be able to figure it out. But it's great. It's great even if you know what's going to happen. It also has a really cool subplot about this character named Gracie Everdeen. She was one of she was the corn maiden from 7 Years Hence, and she dammed the corn and put some kind of blight on the crops. But Ned kind of gets into what her real story is, and I found that part very chilling and creepy and scary. There's some real scary moments in this book. So check out Harvest Home. I highly recommend it. To me, it's a classic, and unfortunately a lost one, that I'm hoping will get rediscovered. I'm looking for more of these lost classic horror books and reviewing them and digging them out of my library. So if you are interested in that, please consider subscribing to my channel. So that's all I have for today. Please let me know what you think of Harvest Home if you read it and or seen the TV movie. It's a perfect book for this time of year, and you'll never look at scarecrows quite the same way again. So thanks for stopping by my haunted library, and I'll see you soon.